The Riverside Country Club was exactly as I remembered it from my childhood. All polished mahogany crystal chandeliers, and the kind of understated luxury that screamed old money. Dad had chosen this venue for his retirement party specifically because it impressed his colleagues from Hartwell Manufacturing, where he'd spent 37 years climbing from floor supervisor to regional manager. I stood near the bar nursing a club soda, watching my father work the room in his element. At 65, Robert Kane still commanded respect in his industry circles, and tonight was his victory lap, a celebration of a career well-lived and a pension well-earned. Christopher. Mom appeared at my elbow looking elegant in her navy dress. I'm so glad you made it. Your father wasn't sure you'd come. Of course I came, Mom. It's Dad's retirement party. She smiled, but I could see the concern in her eyes. He's just, you know how he is about your business ventures. He worries about you. Business ventures. That's what my family called Phoenix Dynamics, the aerospace engineering firm I'd built from scratch over the past 8 years. To them, it wasn't a real company, just another one of my projects that would eventually fail like they expected everything in my life to fail. Where's Jennifer? I asked, looking around for my sister. She's over there with the Morrison family. You should go say hello. Their son just made partner at his law firm. I nodded politely, knowing that Mom's comment wasn't random. Jennifer was the success story of our family, Harvard Law, corporate attorney at a prestigious firm, married to a surgeon, 2 perfect children. She was everything our parents had hoped I would become. Christopher, come here. Dad's booming voice carried across the room. I want you to meet some people. I walked over to where he stood with 3 men in expensive suits, all of them holding whiskey and wearing the confident expressions of people who'd never doubted their place in the world. Gentlemen, this is my son Christopher, Dad said, his tone shifting to something I recognized all too well. Meet the family disappointment. The words hit like a physical blow even though I should have expected them. Dad had been introducing me this way to his friends for years, always with that same sardonic smile that suggested he was joking while making it clear he wasn't. Still pretending to run a business, he continued, taking a sip of his whiskey. You know how young people are these days. Everyone thinks they're going to be the next Steve Jobs. The 3 men chuckled politely, clearly uncomfortable with Dad's public humiliation of his own son. I forced a smile and extended my hand to each of them. Nice to meet you all, I said quietly. Christopher has a little aerospace company, Dad explained with air quotes around the word company. Been at it for 8 years now. We keep telling him to get a real job with benefits, but you know how stubborn kids can be. One of the men, a distinguished gentleman with silver hair, looked genuinely interested. Aerospace? That's fascinating. What kind of work do you do? Before I could answer, Dad jumped in. Oh, he makes parts for airplanes. Little components. Nothing major, just enough to keep him busy and thinking he's important. Actually, I said, finding my voice, we specialize in advanced propulsion systems and satellite technology. We develop. Christopher has quite an imagination, Dad interrupted with that same condescending smile. Always has. Even as a kid, he was building these elaborate Lego contraptions and telling us they were spaceships. The silver-haired man's expression had changed and he was studying me with new interest. Propulsion systems, you said? And satellites. Sir. We've developed some innovative thruster designs that significantly improve fuel efficiency for. Dad, there you are. Jennifer appeared beside us, looking stunning in a black cocktail dress. The Hendersons are asking about your golf tournament next month. Ah, duty calls, Dad said, clearly relieved to escape what he saw as my attempt to oversell my little business. Christopher, why don't you get yourself another drink? Mingle a bit. Maybe you'll learn something about how real businesses operate. As Dad walked away with Jennifer, I found myself alone with the 3 men. The silver-haired gentleman was still watching me intently. I'm sorry about that, I said quietly. Family dynamics, you know? Don't apologize, he replied. Tell me more about these propulsion systems. I'm quite interested in aerospace technology. For the next 10 minutes, I found myself in the most technical conversation I'd had in months. The gentleman, who introduced himself as Dr. Matthews, asked sophisticated questions about thrust-to-weight ratios, fuel injection systems, and orbital mechanics. His 2 companions listened with growing interest as I explained Phoenix Dynamics' breakthrough in ion propulsion technology. Remarkable, Dr. Matthews said when I finished. And you've been working on this for 8 years? Sir. We started in my garage, but now we have a facility about 20 miles outside the city. 37 employees, mostly engineers and technicians. Have you worked with any major aerospace contractors? I hesitated. The truth was complicated and I'd learned to be careful about how much I revealed in social situations. We've done some consulting work for various companies. Nothing I can discuss in detail due to confidentiality agreements. Dr. Matthews nodded knowingly. Of course, the industry is quite secretive. At that moment, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. A tall man in an expensive suit had arrived, and several people were gravitating toward him with the kind of deference reserved for genuine VIPs. Well, I'll be damned, Dr. Matthews said softly. That's William Anderson. My blood went cold. William Anderson, CEO of Pinnacle Industries, one of the largest aerospace contractors in the world. The man who'd been pursuing Phoenix Dynamics for the past 6 months with increasingly aggressive acquisition offers. Do you know him? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. We've met at industry conferences. Brilliant man, ruthless businessman. Pinnacle Industries is probably worth what, $15 billion now? Something like that, I managed. Anderson was making his way through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. But his eyes were scanning the room, and I had a sinking feeling I knew what he was looking for. Or rather, who? Dr. Matthews, I should probably. Christopher. Anderson's voice boomed across the room. There's my favorite acquisition target. Every conversation in the vicinity stopped. Heads turned toward us, including those of Dad and his golf buddies, who had been discussing something near the bar. Anderson strode over with the confidence of a man who owned everything he surveyed. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. We need to talk about that propulsion contract. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Mr. Anderson, this really isn't the time or place. Nonsense. When I heard Robert Kane was having his retirement party here, I had to stop by. Imagine my surprise when I learned his son was the brilliant engineer who's been giving my acquisition team such a hard time. The crowd around us was growing larger. I could see Dad pushing through people to get closer, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. You know, Anderson continued, completely oblivious to my discomfort, your father should be proud. Phoenix Dynamics is exactly the kind of innovative company Pinnacle Industries needs in our portfolio. Portfolio? Dr. Matthews asked, his eyebrows raised. Anderson turned to him with obvious enthusiasm. Dr. Matthews. Good to see you again. Yes, we've been pursuing Phoenix Dynamics for months. Christopher here has developed revolutionary ion propulsion technology that could change the entire satellite industry. We're prepared to offer. Well, let's just say it's a substantial sum. Dad had finally reached us, and he was staring at Anderson like he'd spoken in a foreign language. I'm sorry, Dad said slowly, but I think there's been some confusion. My son runs a small parts company. Anderson looked genuinely puzzled. Parts company? Robert, your son owns Phoenix Dynamics. They've got contracts with NASA, the Air Force, 3 private space companies. We're talking about acquiring them for $4.7 billion. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's face had gone completely white. 4.7 billion? With AB, Anderson confirmed cheerfully. Though Christopher here keeps turning us down. Very smart negotiator. Probably holding out for 5 billion, aren't you? I could see my father processing this information, his brain trying to reconcile the son he thought he knew with the reality Anderson was describing. There must be some mistake, Dad said weakly. No mistake, Anderson replied. Phoenix Dynamics is one of the most promising aerospace companies I've seen in 20 years. Their thruster technology alone is worth hundreds of millions. Add in their satellite systems, their government contracts, their intellectual property portfolio. Christopher's built something extraordinary. More people had gathered around us now, including Mom and Jennifer, both looking stunned. The golf buddies Dad had been trying to impress were staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Mr. Anderson, I said quietly, perhaps we could discuss this privately? Of course. But first, I have to ask, why didn't you tell me your father worked at Hartwell Manufacturing? We've been trying to get our foot in the door there for years. Their precision machining division would be perfect for our new fighter jet contract. Dad was shaking his head slowly. Christopher, is this real? Do you really own a company worth billions of dollars? Before I could answer, Anderson pulled out his phone. Let me show you something, Robert. This is from last month's industry newsletter. He held up his phone, showing an article with my photo and the headline Phoenix Dynamics CEO Christopher Kane named Aerospace Innovator of the Year. Says here Christopher's company has revolutionized satellite propulsion and is projected to capture 30% of the commercial space launch market within 5 years, Anderson read aloud. Current valuation estimated between $4 and $6 billion. Mom had tears in her eyes. Jennifer looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Dad was still staring at the phone screen as if it might be some elaborate prank. But you drive that old Honda, Mom said softly. You live in that small apartment. Because I choose to, I replied. The company's success doesn't mean I need to change how I live. The apartment above the coffee shop downtown? Dr. Matthews asked. I know that building. It's quite charming. I own the building, I said quietly. And the coffee shop. And the bookstore next door. I bought them when the previous owner was struggling financially. More revelations. Each one seemed to hit my family like a separate shockwave. Anderson was scrolling through his phone now. Oh, here's a good one. Christopher, didn't you just sign that contract with SpaceX? The one worth $300 million over 5 years. $300 million? Jennifer's voice came out as a squeak. Just the beginning, Anderson said enthusiastically. Phoenix Dynamics is positioned to become a major player in the new space economy. That's why Pinnacle wants to acquire them before their valuation goes even higher. Dad sat down heavily in a nearby chair. 37 years I worked at Hartwell. 37 years building a career, earning respect, providing for my family. And my son built a billion-dollar company while I thought he was playing with airplane parts. The pain in his voice was unmistakable. Not jealousy or anger, but genuine anguish at how completely he'd misunderstood his own child. Robert, Dr. Matthews said gently, you should be incredibly proud. Your son has accomplished something remarkable. Proud. Dad looked up at me with eyes full of tears. I've been calling him a disappointment for 8 years. I've been telling him to get a real job while he was building something extraordinary, Anderson finished. Robert, I don't know what your family dynamics are, but from a business perspective, your son is one of the most impressive entrepreneurs I've ever encountered. The crowd around us had grown to include most of the party guests. People were pulling out phones, Googling Phoenix Dynamics, finding articles and videos that confirmed everything Anderson had said. Christopher, Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper, why didn't you tell us? It was the question I'd been dreading for years. Because every time I tried to talk about my work, I got lectures about responsibility and getting a real job. It was easier to let you think what you wanted to think. But we're your family, Jennifer said. We should have known. Should you? When was the last time any of you asked about my company without immediately suggesting I give it up and work for someone else? The question hung in the air unanswered because we all knew the truth. Anderson, oblivious to the family drama he'd triggered, was still scrolling through his phone. Christopher, I have to ask about the Mars project. Is it true that Phoenix Dynamics is developing propulsion systems for the first manned mission? I can't comment on classified projects, I said automatically. Classified projects? Dad repeated weakly. Your son has security clearance with the Department of Defense, Anderson explained. Top secret, I believe. Phoenix Dynamics does work for some very sensitive government programs. Each revelation was making things worse. I could see my family struggling to reconcile the son and brother they thought they knew with the person Anderson was describing. Mr. Anderson, I said firmly, I think we should continue this conversation another time. Of course. But Christopher, we really do need to finalize this acquisition discussion. Our board is getting impatient and frankly, every month you delay is costing both of us money. What exactly are you offering? Dr. Matthews asked, his business curiosity overriding social discretion. Anderson glanced at me and I nodded reluctantly. The cat was already out of the bag. $4.7 billion for full acquisition, Anderson said. Though I suspect Christopher will counter with $5 billion. Smart negotiator, like I said. The number hit the crowd like a bomb. People were taking pictures now, presumably to share on social media. Dad's retirement party had turned into something entirely different. $5 billion. Mom repeated slowly as if testing how the words sounded. That's just the opening offer, Anderson said. The real value is in the technology and the contracts. Phoenix Dynamics could be worth $10 billion in 5 years if the space economy develops as predicted. Dad stood up slowly and walked over to me. The crowd parted to give us space, but I could feel everyone watching. Christopher, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. Dad. No, let me say this. For 8 years I've been treating you like a child playing with toys. I've been embarrassed by you, ashamed that my son couldn't get a real job, like his sister. And all this time, you were building something I couldn't even imagine. The pain in his voice was almost unbearable. I called you the family disappointment, he continued. But the truth is I'm the disappointment. I'm the one who failed. I failed to see what you were accomplishing. I failed to support you. I failed to believe in you. Dad, you didn't fail. Yes, I did. And worse, I did it publicly. How many times have I introduced you to people the way I did tonight? How many times have I made you feel small while you were actually achieving greatness? Anderson was watching this exchange with obvious discomfort, probably regretting his dramatic entrance. Dr. Matthews and the other guests were trying to give us privacy while clearly straining to hear every word. You know what the worst part is? Dad said, his voice breaking. You let me do it. You stood there and took my criticism and my mockery, and you never once defended yourself. Why? It was a fair question and one I'd asked myself many times. Because defending myself would have meant using my success as a weapon, I said. I didn't want to hurt you or make you feel bad about your own accomplishments. You worked hard your whole life and built something to be proud of. I didn't want to diminish that. Dad's tears were flowing freely now. You protected my feelings while I attacked yours. You're my father. I love you. Your opinion of me matters more than any business success. But I was wrong. So completely, utterly wrong. Jennifer had joined us now, tears in her own eyes. Christopher, I'm so sorry. We all thought. I know what you thought. It's okay. No, it's not okay, she said firmly. I'm supposed to be your sister, your supporter. Instead, I've been patronizing you for years. Mom had worked her way through the crowd and was now sobbing openly. My baby built a billion-dollar company and I didn't even know. The family reunion in the middle of the country club was drawing attention from the entire party. Anderson looked like he wanted to escape, but he was trapped by the crowd of onlookers. Mr. Anderson, I said, taking control of the situation, would it be possible to schedule a proper meeting to discuss your proposal? Perhaps Monday morning. Of course, he said gratefully. I'll have my assistant call your office. Thank you. And thank you for clearing up some misconceptions tonight. He smiled. Your family should be very proud of you, Christopher. What you've built is remarkable. As Anderson made his escape, promising to be in touch soon, the crowd began to disperse. But my family remained clustered around me, all of us struggling with the emotional whiplash of the evening. Christopher, Dad said finally, can you forgive me? There's nothing to forgive, Dad. Yes, there is. 8 years of treating you like a failure when you were actually succeeding beyond my wildest dreams. 8 years of missing opportunities to celebrate your achievements, to support your work, to be the father you deserved. You were being the father you thought I needed. You were trying to protect me from failure. But you weren't failing. You were building something incredible while I was too blind to see it. Dr. Matthews approached us cautiously. I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I wanted to say something before I leave. We turned to him and I was surprised to see real emotion in his eyes. I've been in aerospace for 40 years, he said. I've seen a lot of brilliant engineers, a lot of innovative companies. But what I witnessed here tonight, the way you handled your father's criticism, the way you protected his dignity even when he was attacking yours, that tells me more about your character than any business success could. He looked directly at Dad. Robert, your son isn't just a successful businessman. He's a good man. That doesn't happen by accident. That comes from how he was raised. After Dr. Matthews left, we stood in awkward silence for a moment. The party was winding down around us, but none of us seemed ready to leave. What happens now? Jennifer asked. Now, I said. Now we go home and try to figure out how to be a family that actually knows each other. Will you take Anderson's offer? Mom asked. I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I'll keep building Phoenix Dynamics into something even bigger. We're just getting started. Dad asked. The company. My team. 37 of the most brilliant engineers and scientists I've ever worked with. Would it be possible to visit your facility sometime? I'd like to see what you've built. I'd love that, Dad. I've wanted to show it to you for years. The drive home was quiet, each of us lost in our own thoughts. But as I pulled into my parking space outside my apartment building, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Anderson. Enjoyed meeting your family tonight. Let's discuss terms Monday. Also, your father seems like a good man who just needed to understand what you've accomplished. Family dynamics are complicated, but it's clear he loves you. Another text followed from Dr. Matthews. Looked up Phoenix Dynamics online when I got home. Incredible work. If you ever need consulting on orbital mechanics, I'd be honored to help. But the message that meant the most came from Dad. Proud of you, son. Always have been, just too stupid to show it properly. Looking forward to that tour of your company. 3 days later, Dad stood in the main facility of Phoenix Dynamics, watching our engineers test a prototype ion thruster that would eventually power satellites to Mars. His face showed the same wonder I'd seen in him as a child when he'd watch my Lego spacecraft launches in the backyard. You really built all this, he said softly. We built it, I corrected. My team and I. And you're really going to help send people to Mars? That's the plan. He was quiet for a long moment, watching the blue glow of the ion engine. Christopher, I need to ask you something. What's that? At the retirement party when I called you the family disappointment, that wasn't the first time, was it? No, Dad. It wasn't. How long have I been doing that to you? I considered lying, softening the truth. But we'd moved past that now. Since I dropped out of law school. About 8 years. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. 8 years of telling my son he was a disappointment while he was changing the world. Dad. No, let me finish. I want you to know that starting today things are different. Starting today, when people ask me about my children, I'm going to tell them about my daughter the lawyer and my son the aerospace genius who's helping humanity reach the stars. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because it's the truth. And because you've been patient with me long enough. 6 months later, Phoenix Dynamics announced its merger with Pinnacle Industries for $5.2 billion. I retained control of all research and development operations, and the combined company became the second-largest aerospace contractor in the world. At the press conference announcing the deal, I was asked about my family's reaction to my success. My family taught me that love isn't about understanding everything about each other, I said. It's about being willing to learn. They're still learning about me and I'm still learning about them. But we're doing it together now, and that makes all the difference. In the audience, Dad sat in the front row wearing a Phoenix Dynamics polo shirt and the biggest smile I'd ever seen on his face. When the reporter asked him how it felt to be the father of a billionaire aerospace entrepreneur, his answer was simple. I'm not proud of my son because he's successful. I'm proud of him because he's the kind of person who uses his success to lift others up. That's the man we raised, even when we were too foolish to see what he was becoming. The family disappointment had finally come home.
I let Madison sell your grandmother's jewelry, my mother-in-law, Patricia, said over the phone, sounding proud. She got a great price, exactly what she needed for a down payment. I tightened my grip on my coffee mug, standing in my kitchen as sunlight streamed through the window. My name is Kate, and at 32, I was listening to Patricia tell me she had given my grandmother's precious jewelry collection to my sister-in-law, Madison, to sell. Oh, I replied, keeping my voice calm. When did this happen? Last week, while you were at that medical conference, Patricia said smugly. Madison found a buyer who gave her $25,000 in cash. Now she can finally move out of that tiny apartment. I sipped my coffee, trying to stay composed. What Patricia didn't know, what Madison hadn't bothered to check, was that my grandmother's jewelry was worth much more than $25,000. She had been a well-known antique jewelry dealer in Boston, and every piece in her collection was carefully documented and appraised. You're awfully quiet, Patricia said, sounding disappointed. I thought you'd be more upset. You always acted like those old trinkets were special. They were special, I said simply. Did Madison tell you who bought them? Some private collector, Patricia said dismissively. Really, Kate, you should be happy. The jewelry was just sitting in a safe deposit box, collecting dust. At least now it's being put to good use. I thought about my grandmother, who had lovingly told me the story behind every piece, like the Art Deco diamond bracelet she found at an estate sale or the Victorian sapphire necklace once owned by a duchess. Well, thanks for letting me know, I said. I need to get ready for work. That's it. Patricia sounded annoyed. You're not going to argue or cry. Would you like me to? She huffed. You've always been so cold, Kate. This is why Madison deserves nice things more than you. She appreciates them. After hanging up, I opened a file on my computer containing photos, certificates, and appraisals of my grandmother's jewelry. The total value? Over $400,000. I called Mr. Sullivan, a family friend and antique dealer. He answered quickly. Kate, I was just about to call you. The strangest thing happened. Let me guess, I said. Someone tried to sell you my grandmother's jewelry? Yes. A young man brought in the Art Deco bracelet and sapphire necklace. He offered them for $15,000. I told him I needed to verify them first, so he left them with me. I smiled. And did you authenticate them? Of course. They're genuine, but Kate, these pieces are still listed under your inheritance. Selling them is illegal. I know, I said, pulling up more documents. Madison took them without my permission. Could you contact the insurance company? Already done, he said. The investigator is coming this afternoon. Kate, this is serious. I nodded. Madison and Patricia had no idea what trouble they were in. A message popped up on my phone from Madison. Thanks for the jewelry, sis. Maybe now you'll learn to appreciate family more. I took a screenshot and added it to my growing file. Then I called my lawyer, Jessica. Hello, Kate. I assume this is about the jewelry. The bank already contacted you? Yes, and the insurance company too. The buyer Madison found is known for shady deals. The police are interested. I leaned back in my chair, feeling unexpectedly calm. And Madison and Patricia? Selling protected estate items using an expired power of attorney? Plus insurance fraud. They've made a mess for themselves. What's our next step? We've frozen any potential sales. The investigators will handle the criminal charges. Do you want to sue them for civil damages? I thought about their years of petty insults and manipulations. Yes, I said firmly, I do. Jessica nodded. I'll draft the papers today. Oh, and Kate, the appraiser is furious about this. He's ready to testify in court. I smiled, remembering my grandmother's words. The best revenge is being prepared. Another text from Madison appeared. The buyer wants more pieces, but anything else valuable. I saved the message as evidence. I didn't need to reply because soon the real consequences were coming. The next day, everything started falling apart faster than I expected. I was reviewing patient files at my pediatric clinic when my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. First, a frantic text from Madison. Kate, the buyer is talking about insurance fraud. He's threatening to go to the police. You have to help me fix this. Then, Patricia's voice messages, shifting from demanding to desperate. Kate, call me back now. This is ridiculous. You knew this would happen. Your father would be so disappointed in you for causing trouble. Please, we need to handle this as a family. I ignored my phone and focused on my patients. During my lunch break, I finally listened to the last message from an unfamiliar number. This is Detective Morgan with the Insurance Fraud Division. We need to speak with you about the unauthorized sale of insured estate items. Please call us back as soon as possible. I called him first. His voice was professional but understanding. The buyer has returned the pieces he purchased, he said. He's cooperating and has shared texts and emails from Madison. And the rest of the collection? I asked. We're still tracking it down. Madison hasn't been very helpful. I wasn't surprised. She always let Patricia clean up her messes. But this time, there was no easy way out. Just then, my nurse entered. Dr. Mitchell, your mother-in-law is in the waiting room. She's making a scene. I sighed. Tell her I'm with patients. I did. She refuses to leave. Then call security. The nurse's eyes widened, but she nodded. Through the window, I saw security escorting Patricia out, her face red with anger. My phone rang immediately. I declined the call. Instead, I called Mr. Sullivan. The insurance investigator is furious, he said. The buyer tried selling more pieces this morning to different dealers. One was your grandmother's pink pearl set. My heart sank. Were they recovered? Yes. but they were damaged. Someone tried to restring them poorly. A wave of fury washed over me. Madison hadn't just stolen from me, she had ruined my grandmother's legacy. Then, a text from my husband Tom. Mom and Madison are at our house. They're hysterical. What's going on? I replied, they stole and sold my grandmother's jewelry with an expired POA. The police are involved. Tom's response was instant, I'm coming home. He always tried to stay neutral, but this time, there was no middle ground. That evening, I walked into our kitchen to find Tom looking shaken. Patricia and Madison sat across from him, red-eyed and defensive. Patricia stood. Finally. Now we can fix this. Kate, tell the police this was a misunderstanding. I placed my bag down. A misunderstanding. You use an expired power of attorney to steal my inheritance and sell it for a fraction of its worth. What exactly am I misunderstanding? I had that POA for emergencies, Patricia argued, which expired 6 months ago. Madison jumped in, her voice shrill. I needed the money. You don't even wear that jewelry. You don't appreciate nice things. I clenched my jaw. Appreciate? You sold a priceless pearl collection for pocket change and ruined it. My grandmother spent 20 years collecting those pearls. They're just pearls. Madison snapped. Why are you making such a big deal? Tom finally spoke. How much was the collection worth? $400,000. Madison's face turned pale. Patricia gripped the counter. That's impossible, Madison whispered. The buyer, the one working with police, gave them all the proof they need, I said. Patricia turned to Tom. You have to stop her. She's your wife. But Tom was staring at the documents I had laid out, appraisals, bank records, evidence of theft. Mom, he said quietly. What were you thinking? Patricia's voice wavered. I was thinking about family, unlike Kate, who's always been an outsider. It was a protected estate. I cut in. Gran spent her life preserving those pieces. Madison scoffed. Well, she's dead now. She doesn't need them. Silence. Even Patricia looked horrified. I exhaled. You're right, she's gone. Which is why I promised to protect her legacy. Now you both need to leave. Your lawyers can contact mine about the civil case. You're suing us? Madison shrieked. Among other things, I opened a door, and the insurance fraud case is just beginning. After they left, Tom sat down stunned. I never thought they'd do this. I met his gaze. Didn't you? They've been taking from me for years. The only difference now? There's proof. He swallowed. What happens next? Now, I said, we let the law handle it. Just then, a message from Detective Morgan. We found more pieces at pawn shops. Can you come tomorrow to identify them? I replied, yes. Then a text from Mr. Sullivan. Your grandmother always knew you understood the true value of things, not just the price, but the history. She'd be proud of you. I glanced at the small diamond ring on my finger, the first piece my grandmother ever bought. Some things were worth more than money. The legal process moved quickly, and within weeks, Madison and Patricia were facing both criminal charges for insurance fraud and civil lawsuits. The impact on our family was like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples everywhere. I sat in the lawyer's office, going through the growing stack of evidence. The investigators had tracked down most of the stolen jewelry at pawn shops. Some items were damaged beyond repair, and others had been broken apart to sell the stones separately. The good news, Jessica, the lawyer said, is that we have all the evidence. The bad news is that some pieces were badly damaged, making this a much bigger case. Mr. Sullivan had provided a detailed list of the ruined items. The pink pearl collection, now ruined from poor wristringing, was a huge loss to antique jewelry collectors. My phone buzzed with a message from Tom. Mom wants to meet. She says she wants to make things right. I showed Jessica the message, and she shook her head. No private meetings. Everything must go through the legal process now. Patricia and Madison had tried different approaches. They'd apologized, threatened to ruin the family, and even claimed I was overreacting to a misunderstanding. But the evidence was clear. Security cameras showed Patricia taking jewelry from the safe deposit box multiple times, and Madison's messages to buyers showed she knew exactly what she was doing. The criminal charges were the hardest for them. Patricia's expired power of attorney was fraud, and Madison had sold protected estate items illegally. Their plan had failed completely. They're offering a settlement, Jessica told me one morning. They want to pay for the damage and drop the rest. I thought about my grandmother, who had spent years preserving these pieces. No, I said firmly. This is about more than money. The final court hearing was set for spring. I met Tom outside the courthouse. He looked tired, but determined. Our marriage had been strained by everything, but he had stopped trying to keep the peace at any cost. Madison's inside, Tom said quietly. She's still claiming she didn't know the collection's real value. Despite the appraisal documents, I asked. Tom nodded. Mom's not here. Her lawyer told her not to come. The hearing was quick. With so much evidence against them, Patricia and Madison accepted plea deals. They would have criminal records, and civil penalties would make sure they paid for the damage they caused. As we left the courthouse, I got one last message from Patricia. I hope you're happy. You've torn this family apart. I showed it to Tom, and he surprised me by laughing bitterly. Classic mom, she still won't admit she did anything wrong. That evening, Mr. Sullivan came to see me with good news. Using his connections in the jewelry world, he had found similar pieces to replace what we had lost. They'll never replace your grandmother's collection, he said, showing me pictures, but they will help preserve the history she cared about. Thank you, I said, touched by his efforts. Why did you work so hard on this? He smiled. Your grandmother was more than a colleague, she was a friend. She always said you were the only one who understood that jewelry isn't just about looking pretty. It's about preserving stories and protecting history. She knew you'd protect that legacy. 6 months later, I opened an exhibit at the local historical society called the Mitchell Collection. It showcased the recovered pieces along with photographs and stories of their history. My grandmother's legacy was preserved and shared with the community. Patricia and Madison weren't invited to the opening, but I heard they drove by a few times, watching as people admired the items they had tried to sell for quick cash. Tom stood beside me at the exhibit, holding my hand as visitors admired the displays. You did the right thing, he said softly. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize that my phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Sullivan. Your grandmother would be so proud, not just for saving the collection, but for standing up for what's right. I touched the small diamond ring on my finger, the first piece my grandmother ever acquired. Some things are worth more than money, and some lessons are worth learning, no matter how hard. Sometimes, the best way to get back at people isn't to seek revenge. It's to protect what matters, preserve what's precious, and share it with those who truly understand its value. Madison and Patricia learned their lesson the hard way, but I learned something too. Strength isn't always about fighting back. Sometimes it's about standing firm, protecting what's right, and letting justice do its work. The collection might never be whole again, but its story, and my grandmother's legacy would live on. It would be protected by someone who understood that some things are more valuable than money, and some principles are worth more than peace. Just admit it, Emily. I have proof. Jessica shouted, waving her phone in my face. The whole family went silent. My husband, Mark, looked at me with confusion and doubt. I'm Emily Parker, and I was watching my sister-in-law try to ruin my marriage with lies. She had messages between me and my coworker, David, talking about secret meetings. What she didn't know was that David was helping me plan a surprise birthday party for Mark. These messages aren't what you think, I said calmly, putting down my fork. The dinner I had spent hours cooking sat untouched. Jessica scrolled through her phone. Meet me at the hotel at 8. Don't tell anyone. What else could that mean, Emily? She turned to Mark. I hate to tell you this, little brother, but she's been lying to you. Mark's face fell, and my heart ached. The hotel was where I was meeting the party planner, but if I explained now, it would ruin the surprise. Jessica knew that. She wanted me to stay quiet. What she didn't know was that a few months ago, I had seen something on her phone. A notification popped up while I was helping her order food. It was a message about an offshore bank account, something that could destroy her marriage to Mark's brother, Tom. Jessica, I said, looking her in the eye. Are you sure you want to do this? She hesitated but then straightened. I'm protecting my family. Our mother-in-law, Margaret, stood up. Mark, I never trusted her. A woman who works late, always on her phone. She patted Mark's shoulder. I looked at my husband, the man who had always been by my side. Mark, please, you know me. Jessica wasn't finished. She showed more messages, fake ones. She had taken my real texts with David and changed them. Can't wait to hold you again, she read aloud. Our secret is safe. Gasps filled the room. Tom shifted uncomfortably. He knew something wasn't right, but he stayed quiet. Mark pushed his chair back. I need some air, he muttered and walked out. Jessica tried to follow, but I grabbed her arm. Remember that notification, Jessica? I whispered. The one of the offshore account? She went pale but pulled away. I don't know what you're talking about. She had planned this moment carefully, choosing a family dinner where her lies would hurt the most. But she didn't plan for my patience. For months, I had been gathering proof. Jessica wasn't the perfect wife she pretended to be. She had been stealing money from her husband's company. I had worked with an accountant to get all the evidence. As the room filled with whispers and calls to relatives, I quietly picked up my things. Running away? Jessica sneered. Guilty people always run. I met her eyes. No, Jessica. I'm going home to wait for my husband, but you might want to check your messages, especially the ones from Cayman National Bank. Her smirk faded just a little. I drove home, my mind racing. Jessica thought she had won, but she had underestimated me. Mark needed time to think, and that was fine. I had work to do. I picked up my phone and sent a message to the accountant. It's time. Send everything to Tom tomorrow morning. Jessica wanted to play games. She was about to learn that some games don't end the way you expect. The next morning, I woke up alone. Mark hadn't come home, but I expected that. What I didn't expect were all the missed calls and texts from Jessica. Her last message made me smile. We need to talk. Now. I ignored her and got ready for work. Just as I pulled into the hospital parking lot, my phone rang. It was Tom. Emily, he sounded shaken. Is this real? These bank statements, the transfers. Tell me this is some mistake. I'm so sorry, Tom, I said softly. I found out 3 months ago, but I needed proof before saying anything. The forensic accountant had sent him everything. Records of Jessica stealing from his company, offshore accounts, and even texts with a man named Michael about their plans to run away. $2 million. Tom's voice cracked. She's been stealing from me for years, and yesterday she had the nerve to. He stopped, too upset to continue. I know, I said. She was trying to turn everyone against me before I could tell you the truth. My phone beeped. Jessica was calling again. I ignored it. What do I do now? Tom asked. Call your lawyer, I told him. I can send you the accountant's information. He has everything documented. After hanging up, I went into the clinic. No matter what was happening in my life, my patients still needed me. But midway through my morning shift, my nurse came in. Dr. Parker, your sister-in-law is here. She's making a scene. I finished up with my patient and walked to the waiting room. Jessica stood there, looking a mess, her hair out of place, her expensive outfit wrinkled. How dare you, she hissed. You had no right. I led her to my office, shutting the door behind us. No right? I said. Like you had no right to steal from your husband, or to try to ruin my marriage. It's not what you think, she started. Then explain, I said. Explain the offshore account. Explain who Michael is. Explain why you accused me last night. Jessica sank into a chair, her confidence slipping. You don't understand. I deserve more than this. Tom's always working. You're the family's perfect doctor. And what am I? Just a housewife. You're a mother, I reminded her. You have a husband who loves you, a comfortable life. It's not enough, she snapped. Michael understands me. We had plans. Had plans? I asked. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, her face turning pale. Tom froze all the accounts, she whispered. He called his lawyer. Did you really think you could steal millions, run off with your boyfriend, and destroy my marriage on your way out? I asked. I needed everyone focused on you, she admitted. If they believed you were cheating, no one would notice when I left. My phone lit up with a text from Mark. We need to talk. Meet me at home. You should go, I told Jessica. You have a lot to explain to your husband, and Jessica. Those texts with David, they were about Mark's surprise birthday party. But I guess you ruined that too. She stood fixing her clothes with shaking hands. Emily, please, help me fix this. Like you tried to fix my marriage? I shook my head. You did this to yourself. As she left, I felt no joy, only sadness for her kids, who would suffer because of her choices. But right now, I had my own marriage to think about. I texted Mark that I was on my way, then asked my colleague to cover my afternoon patients. Some things were more important than work. The drive home felt endless. Had Mark seen the evidence about Jessica? Did he understand now why I hadn't spoken up sooner? More importantly, could he forgive me? When I pulled into the driveway, I saw not only Mark's car, but also Tom's. This conversation was about to get very interesting. When I walked into the living room, Mark and Tom were sitting there, looking exhausted. Papers from the forensic accountant were spread out on the coffee table. Mark stood up as soon as he saw me, his eyes red. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I should have known." I held up my hand. "You trusted Jessica. We all did." Tom picked up one of the bank statements, shaking his head. $2 million. And she was planning to leave next month. She already had tickets to the Cayman Islands. "Where is she now?" I asked, sitting beside Mark. He took my hand immediately. "At her sister's house," Tom replied. "The lawyers are working on the divorce, and the police want to question her about the stolen money." Mark squeezed my hand. "Why didn't you tell me what you knew?" I turned to him, seeing the pain in his eyes. I needed proof. Jessica is good at twisting things around. If I had spoken up without evidence, it would have caused even more damage. Mark sighed. Instead, she tried to ruin our marriage. "About that," I said, pulling out my phone. "David, the man Jessica accused me of cheating with. He's the event planner I hired for your birthday party." I shoved in photos and messages about the party plans. Mark's eyes widened. "You were planning a party for me?" "A big one," I said with a sad smile. 35 is a special birthday. I wanted to surprise you." Tom stood up. "I should go. The lawyers are waiting." He paused at the door. "Emily, thank you for everything." After he left, Mark and I sat quietly. Then he spoke. "I failed you. When Jessica accused you, I should have trusted you. Instead, I walked out." "You were shocked," I said gently. "Jessica had proof. You needed time to process it." "But after 8 years of marriage, I should have believed you first," he said. I thought about the months I had spent carrying this secret, watching Jessica act innocent while planning to betray everyone. I said slowly, "this is a lesson for both of us. Maybe it will make us stronger." Mark pulled me into his arms. "I love you. I promise no one will ever come between us again." Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Jessica's crime became public, and she faced legal charges. She and Tom divorced, and their children stayed with him. Jessica only saw them with supervision. Margaret, our mother-in-law, tearfully apologized. "I was blind," she admitted. "I always wanted to believe Jessica was perfect." The birthday party never happened, but Mark and I took a trip instead. It was time to heal and rebuild our trust. Jessica eventually pleaded guilty. Michael, the man she planned to run away with, disappeared as soon as the truth came out, taking whatever money she had already sent him. A year later, we gathered for Thanksgiving. It was a smaller group now, quieter without Jessica, but more peaceful. Tom was starting to move on, and the children were adjusting. Mark and I were stronger than ever. Mark raised his glass. "To family, the people who stand by us, trust us and love us, even when it's hard." I looked at Tom and saw that he had finally found peace. We had all been through a storm, but in the end, we had found what truly mattered. Life isn't always perfect. It's messy and complicated. But sometimes, the hardest moments lead to the strongest bonds. And that's more important than any perfect fairy tale ending.